possible. Rex, have a look in front of us here quickly. Sorry, straight ahead of us is a very flat, what you could have guessed to be a tortoise, I guess, just because it's walking along on land. But it's a terrapin. Just showing you terrapins are very comfortable on dry land as well. And I would guess that maybe that one got disturbed quite a bit by those buffalo wallowing. He's just cruising off into the bush. I'm going to go a little forward. We'll have another look at these buffalo again. Just enjoying that bull there in the water. He seems very content. Like I said, one of the reasons is that the food around is very good now. But these buffalo still need to ruminate. The fact that the food is of higher quality, this means that they can get more energy from it per weight of food. So still fill their bellies up every morning, spend a part of the day ruminating, chewing that food again, getting it digested really well, making sure they get the most benefit from whatever they eat. And then they'll have another feeding session again this afternoon, a couple of hours just around the area, filling up their rumens, or that first big compartment of the stomach again, and then ruminating again early evening. Well spotted. I think Rexon is looking with me at the same things. I was just looking at those two little guys, some plovers. Again, a silhouetted shape of the bird, but it's a blacksmith plover. You can hear it making a noise just now. We see them often around the edges of the water here. Well, I think we're going to move along. Just before we do, two things. I just want to let the game drivers know quickly. Stations, some Dagga boys, Buffelshoek Dam. I don't know what's going on the radio. Other thing I want to do just before we move on, like I said, hopefully we still find elephant this afternoon. It's one of the things I'm looking for. But Penny, if you're still with us on the game drive, you asked earlier today about elephants and how their tusks work. I mentioned a specific example of one of the big bulls in Kruger, a bull called Duke, who I haven't actually seen myself. There's buffalo just coming out the water. But she was mentioning that you had an elephant bull with really spectacular tusks, and you had other bulls with him, younger bulls that tend to hang around with the old bulls called Ascaris, and that their tusks were smaller than his, but physically some of them were bigger. Now, it's very much a case of genetics, which is what Penny asked. Basically, if the size of an elephant tusk has got to do with the genetics or obviously the family history. And it literally is that. So the same as you might have, trying to think of a nice analogy, but if you have people with really great teeth, it's likely that their children will have really great teeth. And the same with elephants. Now, there's a whole lot of other answers to it, and one of the problems with asking me questions is that sometimes I can ramble on a bit, because obviously there's an answer to something, but more importantly there's understanding what it's about. One of the things that's a little bit sad maybe is that in the early days of hunting in Africa, elephant hunting, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Those are the people that discovered and sort of looked into Africa to a large extent. They were also the first people to start conservation movements later on, your early day hunters. But in the early days of elephant hunting, it was all selective. So they hunted elephants with the biggest tusks. So unfortunately, genetically, there's less big tuskers around than there used to be. But in terms of the elephant size and his tusks, you can have a physically smaller elephant with very large tusks. So genetically, he's not a big, bulky elephant, but genetically he's got very big tusks, as opposed to maybe an elephant that genetically is very large. Maybe his dad is the equivalent of a 6'5" man, but his tusks aren't that big. So you obviously get lots of variations also in the shapes and sizes of them. I think Rexon also wants to have a look at this buffalo, deciding he's not into us talking about elephants and not talking about buffalo, and he came right over next to us here to have a nice mud wallow. That also makes for a happy buffalo, some nice slushy sticky mud. Both to cool down, again just the physical act of getting wet with mud and water cools you down, but it's also got a lot of practical benefits for him. He's getting rid of parasites now that we've got rain again and that it's getting summertime and nice and warm. There's lots of ticks around, so it's a good way to get rid of ticks. They'll get caught up and suffocated in that mud. Also good for the skin, way of getting rid of dead hair and dead skin cells. Obviously at some stages buffalo will go and rub it off against a tree, and then there you can see with his face as well, getting his horns and his dewlap, that piece of skin on the bottom part of his neck, getting all that wet. The dewlap is another place where he gets to cool himself down through, and obviously for the horns, they need to take care of the horns. Later on he'll rub it off against the tree again, keeping those horns nice and healthy and strong. Speaking of the horns, there's another bull that's coming down for a wallow. He's just arrived. He just, not for long, briefly horn wrestled one of the bushes there, partly to clean off the horns again, like I mentioned, getting rid of the dead cells and dead parts on it, but also to show these other bulls as he's coming down. Just a reminder that he knows how to use his head. Big guy as well. Very impressive buffalo. Let's look at those shoulders and that neck. Grumpy old men, these big Dagga boys. Interesting. Maybe he got pushed around the other day or a few days ago by this guy. It's definitely recognition or smell of recognition there. Oh, that's a big bull. Saw some spectacular buffalo yesterday afternoon here with Wild Earth, Rexon and Jan on the drive. Two big bulls in their prime having a proper fight. Stuff you don't see every day out here. Oh, there's some oxpeckers flying over. I'm sure they're gonna settle on some of these buffalo just now. Another way of getting rid of parasites. I think we're gonna move along.